What's up, MetaNerdz? This video will be a complete breakdown of an obscure but very interesting droid, LA-L9, seeing how it inspired ZX-3 and then the Dark Trooper program. This droid unit was intended to replace the Clone Trooper during the war, meaning that if the plans of Tag Co came to fruition, it would have been full droid-on-droid warfare across the galaxy. The large, powerful, and still family-controlled Tag Co had close ties to Republic top brass, and immediately after the galaxy heard the details of the Battle of Naboo, with everything from droid starfighters to battle droids, Orm & Tag could see the galaxy was headed for even greater conflicts. And the first to convince the Republic to adopt their own droid army would become the richest man in the galaxy. Over the next decade, his company would conduct a complicated symphony of movements, with Orman acting as orchestrator, using everything from corporate espionage, compromising politicians to earn their loyalty, to acquiring the right engineers and raw materials to create the droid soldier the Republic couldn't say no to. With each year that passed, it was increasingly clear that the Civil War was coming. 28 ABY saw a dramatic shift towards planetary leaders putting their own planet's interests ahead of the Republic as a ruling body. And by 24 BBY, the Confederacy of Independent Systems was declared, 2 years before war would break out on Geonosis. We can imagine Tag Co holo terminals were slammed, and corporate espionage experts were screamed at when Orm & Tag got word that apparently the Republic had an enormous army kept in secret, a clone trooper army with all their needs already very well met. After hitting some spice and meeting with his top advisors, the company decided that their LA-L9 droid had to be rushed into production, and that with some changes, they could take advantage of the nature of the clone army. Since the Jedi had decided to go with a foolish, organic design for their troopers, there would be a need for droid units that could brave dangerous environments. As the war spread, there were countless battlefronts in poisonous gas clouds, deep underwater, in intense heat, or in the vacuum of space. So if the Tag droid could shine in these battles, he was confident it would convince the top brass to phase out the organics in favor of this powerful design. Equipped with the most advanced servo motors and equilibrium centers of its day, this bulky seeming droid was actually far more nimble than something like the B-2, which, like its CIS competitor, this droid had weapons built into its arms, being able to adjust the plasma flow to send out flames or bolts of plasma like a blaster, with the flames being useful in causing spreading damage throughout an enemy ship or base, and hitting the enemy even if they were behind cover or using some sort of physical shielding. While the plasma cannon was more powerful than any blaster out there, strong enough to fry portable shield generators and droidicas. The head of this droid was designed to be a nod to the Phase 1 helmets, hoping this would make them look like they could fit into the army. And this dome houses the enhanced sensor globe that gave it a 360-degree view of the battlefront and a wider spectrum of light than the organic eye. The mask-looking device is an atmospheric sampler, which ensured that it could stay operable and transmit this data to Republic strategists, with generators and processors located in the chest, along with thick plate armor to protect it, and we also see these layers down the legs. It used technology and materials to make it immune to most electromagnetic bursts, which means it didn't share the same EMP weakness that most battle droids had. And even its little fingertips are weapons. Little blast nozzles spun these blades at a rate that allowed it to cut through solid durasteel. Now, Tag did have one problem, that of course the powerhouses of the Kaminoan cloners and Kuat drive yards would not be happy to see a newcomer trying to carve out a slice of their pie, and it was also highly illegal to develop a droid army. It had been so since the invasion of Naboo, and even more so since the Clone Wars broke out. So this top secret program wanted to get real-world feedback that would be so impressive that the Republic would overlook this issue and have to say yes to some lucrative contracts. The leaders of this project decided that they would get real-world feedback from the barbaric arena death matches being held on the backwater planet of Ratatak. Tag would head there personally, and was so confident his 10 years of planning would result in a bloodbath, visualizing how the other contestants would be crushed, cut, burned, and blasted to death, that he put up 100,000 credits of his own money on the fight. In a way, this fight would be a success in some ways, as it held its own against the greatest warriors in the galaxy, and even rapidly identified Asajj Ventress as the greatest threat. Everything was working right, but it was still no match for the Force in the hands of a Sith assassin. Before it could fry her head off, she rocketed the prototype up into the rocks, ending this droid's hopes in a fiery explosion. Such a dramatic and public dispatching of Tag's decade-long dream droid project left him embarrassed, and he lost all faith in LA-L9. And he lost that 100K. Knowing this fight was recorded for the Hollows, he chose to avoid the embarrassment and any blowback that the major rival companies like Kuat, who just might manipulate the Senate and media to make it look like Tag was building a secret droid army for the Separatists. The fact that Dooku hosted this tournament certainly was bad optics. So though he gave up on this, the spark of the idea was never fully extinguished. And as the war raged on, and Republic became the Empire, General Rom Mak would come to work with Tag Co. to bring about droid troopers for the Empire. The first iteration was the ZX-3 experimental droid trooper, considered the second generation of the LAL-9, being the same height and pitched for the same purpose, for areas too dangerous for stormtroopers to travel. This time, the design was made to be able to use other weapons with functional hands in a modular chest attachment, seen usually carrying a blaster rifle or Berletto AAP-4 blaster box. Sadly, top Imperial brass had the bad metallic taste of droids from the past war still in their mouths, and wanted nothing to do with droid soldiers. The roughly 100 models made for the Empire to test out were all ordered to be scrapped near instantly. But Rom Mak wouldn't give up on this either, and he and Tag were finally able to get a hit with the Dark Trooper project. Starting as a bit of a recycling job, with Phase 0 of the Dark Trooper project being made by taking top clone veterans and turning them into cyborgs by removing 70% of their body parts in the hopes of keeping their organic mind and battlefront wisdom, with all the advantages of a steel body and digital sensors. This evolved to be pure droid versions from Phase 1 on, all the way up to Phase 3, an Imperial droid trooper that would end up outliving the Empire itself in the service of Moff Gideon. While around the same time, ZX-3, an Imperial droid that survived the mass scrapping, rose up to lead a revolution on the droid world of Kligzin's moon. His droid army was raised to fulfill his secret wish to turn the world over to his Imperial masters, still being loyal deep into his circuits. But when he was killed, the revolution died out, and the ZX-3 was finally extinct. And the only hope this line survives would be from whatever source Moff Gideon secured his Dark Troopers. So that's it for this odd but fascinating droid line. For behind the scenes facts, the ZX-3 is one of the earliest droids in the history of Star Wars, being first seen in the comic Star Wars 47, released in 1981, while it got its name and details from the Essential Guide to Droids in 2006, which also had the breakdown on the LAL-9. While the Dark Trooper lore came from a variety of RPG sources and games, being finally shown on screen in The Mandalorian. Let me know what you think. Will we ever see a full droid-on-droid war, or is keeping it droids versus people more interesting? If you like this, you'll be sure to like these videos. Likes, comments, and shares are the best ways to help me out. Check out the membership, subscribe if you want to see more, but most important of all, remember, never bet against a Sith, and the Force will be with you, always.